the course participants to view the explosion in safety.
All right, we're ready for our first set of shots for today.
1994 Pontiac Sunbird. Don't blink, this is only gonna happen once.
Stand by for count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Chemical explosions like this produce a powerful shock wave. It tears through the explosive and out into the environment. At the moment of detonation, the explosive expands. A massive volume of air moves outward. It's this phenomenon that creates the shock wave. The shock wave moves at supersonic speed. It forces moisture in the air to condense instantly. This creates a sudden white cloud or flash. It's why you see an explosion, but hear the bang seconds later.
The chemical reaction is causing a shock front that's radiating out from the center or the seat of the detonation.
High-speed footage gives us a unique glimpse of the shock wave as it moves across the desert floor and rises above the New Mexico skyline. The shock wave travels at over 1,220 miles an hour, about 1.5 times the speed of sound.
That shock wave travels through the air and can do damage to buildings, to human beings, to the environment.
The shock wave exerts a blast pressure of up to 5,000 pounds per square inch, the equivalent of 10 2-ton trucks hitting a wall at 175 miles per hour.
If you get 10 to 15 psi, you start destroying your eardrums. A few psi could knock you down. 20 or 30 psi would damage a building.
The blast wave rushes out from the explosion, pushing everything out of its path. In its wake, it leaves a void. Negative pressure builds up, sucking the air backward toward the site of the explosion.
So sometimes in a building, you may see, if a device has exploded inside of a building, you'll see glass that gets pushed out and then sucked back into the building because of the negative effect of the shockwave.
The blast propels debris from the explosion. Jagged scraps of shrapnel rip through the air like bullets.
Another hazard that we're really concerned with is the shrapnel or fragmentation effect. That is, objects, either part of the device, things that have been added to increase lethality, or things that are in close proximity that are being propelled by the force of the detonation. Typically on the car bombs with 500 pounds of explosives, we get fragmentation and shrapnel that travels anywhere between 1,700 to probably 1,900 feet.
Find yourself near an IED like this, and shrapnel could cut you down even 1,800 feet from the blast. That's as far as 6 football fields laid end to end. And if the initial blast doesn't kill you, the after effects could. The bigger the bang, the more it will damage or destroy nearby buildings, turning them into death traps for the people inside and the first responders sent to rescue them. If scientists can understand the incredible power unleashed by a terrorist explosion, they could begin to build safer buildings. But there's one overwhelming problem: fire. It masks much of the damage caused by an explosion. So at the University of California, San Diego, Professor Gil Hegemeyer came up with an ingenious way to look into the heart of an explosion without ever having to blow something up. This blast simulator delivers the same knockout punch as a car bomb. It uses rubber-coated steel plates powered by hydraulic pistons to smash into buildings, and creates the effects of a terrorist explosion without the resulting fireball.
This is the highest speed hydraulics you'll find in the world, okay? There's nothing probably in the universe.
With no fireball, high-speed cameras and instruments can record what happens close up.
You have a fireball, you can't see anything, typically, and the debris field plus the fireball will take all your instruments and do nasty things to them.
In a bomb blast, the pressure blasting against the building structure creates the most devastation, not the ensuing fireball.
The pressure pulse delivered to the specimen is what's important here. This machine does produce the knockout punch that you get from a real explosion. It delivers all the energy to the specimen that it would see from an actual charge going off, such as a car bomb at the curb.
Today, Hegemeyer studies a new technique to protect buildings against terrorist attacks. He wraps a column in a special polymer to see if it can withstand the equivalent force of a car bomb blast. This industrial wallpaper, known as reinforced polymer, is as thin as a cotton shirt, stronger than steel, and consists of carbon threads bonded with resin.
When you wrap, you contain and confine the concrete and prevent those fragments from moving through a building and killing the occupants.
In the accumulator bank, pressure builds. Outside, this pressure is about to be released. Generators drive steel plates precisely shaped to replicate an explosion shockwave as it pulverizes the concrete.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. We are at high pressure.
Right now, that column is under 100,000 pounds of vertical force. So if that was a column in a real building, it's still good to go. It may not look so good, but it's supporting the load, and that's what those carbon wraps are all about.
The carbon fiber wrap protects and supports the column. An unwrapped column is blown to pieces. This technology has huge implications. It could have saved many lives in Oklahoma City during the 1995 terror attack that destroyed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building.
The structural collapse took more lives than the actual blast effects. One column that could no longer support its load initiated a catastrophic failure sequence.
From the battlefield to our cities, we're seeing the awesome power of explosives and witnessing their terrible consequences. In the art of blowing things up, we've come a long way. Today's high explosives are about 15 to 20 times more powerful than gunpowder. But with more power comes less control. And unless a bomb goes off when you want it to, it's worse than useless. The task of balancing a bigger bang with increased stability falls to Dr. Randall Simpson at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California.
All of these materials need to be stable. That is that if they're unstable, they're of no value for civilian use or for military use. The goals for national security missions or industrial use are materials that are so stable that they will not explode in a fire environment. Another requirement is they last for a very, very long period of time.
To create safe and stable explosives, Simpson and his team analyze the events that occur at the heart of an explosion. Here, complex chemical reactions take place in just a few billionths of a second, and temperatures can reach 9,440 degrees Fahrenheit.
We refer to this type of chemistry as extreme chemistry. Chemistry that occurs up to 500,000 atmospheres of pressure, chemistry that occurs up to several thousand centigrades, chemistry that may occur on very, very short time frames. All of those extreme conditions are represented by the detonation of an explosive.
This is extreme chemistry, conducted at a molecular level.
When you're working with hazardous materials, you start off with very small quantities until you understand the properties, and then you gradually increase the quantities of materials that you work with.
Today, they are testing one of the most advanced high explosives in military use, LX-14. It's an extremely powerful plastic-bonded high explosive. 1 teaspoon of LX-14 is about 17 times more powerful than a teaspoon of gunpowder. It's used to detonate missile warheads. The team are carrying out a series of tests to examine how LX-14 behaves at the moment of detonation.
And here comes the fire. Go reaction.
By studying the mechanics of each blast, they can design explosives that deliver the required bang, but with the necessary stability. They bind the explosive material in plastic. The plastic absorbs shock, reducing the risk of accidental detonation. The trick is to create a complex cocktail of explosive material and plastic polymer that will detonate with the required force, but only when triggered.
There are misconceptions about explosives that they're chaotic, they're very random, but if done properly, they can be extraordinarily precise and safe materials to work with.
This is LX-17. It's more stable than LX-14, but less powerful. It's used in warheads and only explodes if detonated by a more powerful explosive like LX-14. It's so stable, it's even possible to machine it, turning the high explosive into three-dimensional shapes for use in weapons. It can even survive a plane crash without detonating. John Molitoris studies the power and stability of explosives by analyzing the shock waves generated by a controlled detonation.
The problem is you make an HE more insensitive. What you do is you make it less powerful. The real trick is to make the high explosive more insensitive, but also give it the same explosive power, which is the name of the game.
The test takes place in these huge containment tanks. They can absorb immense heat and pressure and survive a blast of up to 22 pounds of high explosive.
The violence of these reactions can vary enormously. Metal will fly at 2 miles per second.
Molitoris measures the temperature of the fireball as it grows and expands using a pyrometer.
As the fireball grows, these things will measure the very violent changes in pressure and temperature.
He also measures the impact of the shock wave on the metal holder containing the explosive. Safe behind bomb-proof doors, technicians record the precise moment that the explosive detonates.
3, 2, 1, trigger.
Wow. That's fantastic. Look at that. That's great. It's really great.
Tank is venting.
The destructive power of the explosion surprises even Molitoris.
I didn't think that type of that high explosive and that geometry would fragment it to that degree. I thought there'd be some little plate left over. A little bit confounded about that.
The explosive tears apart the half-inch thick aluminum holder on which it is sitting. To do this takes less than 5 ounces of LX-14. Imagine what a warhead containing 2,000 pounds of it could do.
It is a pretty powerful high explosive, and that's the nature of the game. That's why we do experiments. You know, you don't always know what you're going to get.
For centuries, scientists combined chemicals to create ever bigger bangs. Now, we witness what happens when they take the world apart and unleash the extraordinary energy contained within the fabric of the universe itself, the atom. The scorching New Mexico desert, a vast wilderness. July 16th, 1945. It's teeming with activity. This is